All right, welcome to Fast Break Breakfast NBA Podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. I have Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers on the show coming up in just a few minutes. The Fantasy Footballers are the #1 sports podcast in America. At least they were last time I checked. We talk about fantasy football and fantasy basketball and Andy's hometown team, the Suns. Also, I open Andy's mind up to negative fantasy. He hadn't quite considered it. And then after that, in the last drop, after Andy, I talk with Gerald Bourget of PHNX Sports. He covers the Suns, so we do a little bit more Suns talk to cover the team that doesn't seem to be having very much fun as training camp starts. By the way, if you want to play fantasy basketball and negative fantasy basketball with me and with John and with Chuck, those signups are happening right now. Go to patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast to sign up there. Our first fantasy draft is October 9th, and we'll have some drafts leading right up until the season. If you want to play, we will try to find you a spot. And of course, the International Stackhouse of Pancakes Negative Fantasy League, there's no cap on the number of teams that can join up. So everyone come join, come play negative fantasy. The NBA season, the NBA preseason starts tomorrow. If you didn't know, on Friday, the first preseason game happens at 5 a.m. Central Time, 3 a.m. West Coast Time, as the Warriors and Wizards play in Japan. After that, maybe you're not ready to wake up for that one, but after that, the Clippers are playing Ra'anana Maccabi Ra'anana. I'm not lying. That game's a little bit later, and actually during the second half of that game, at what we're calling 10:20 a.m. Central, we will be doing our monthly Zoom hangout and AMA for our Patreon supporters. That'll, again, be at 10:20 Central. True breakfast time for our millennial brunch hangout. Again, if you want to get involved with that, that's at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Another announcement, another thing to look forward to on Saturday night. The Grizzlies play their first preseason game against the Milwaukee Bucks, and I will be doing a live stream over in our playback room. That game is broadcast locally and on League Pass if you're not in the Grizzlies viewing area, but the only broadcast team that's going to be doing it is the Milwaukee Bucks. The Grizzlies aren't sending their own team to the game. So if you want a more Grizzlies flavor to that viewing experience, you could join me and possibly some special guests over in our playback room. Also, if you want to see the Grizzlies in person this year at the FedEx Forum, well, go ahead and lock in the best seats at the lowest prices with Grizzlies season tickets. The first home game is this coming Monday against Paolo Banchero and the Magic. The season tickets start at just $11 per game. Plus, when you become an MVP member, you guarantee your playoff priority. Plus, you get all the next level benefits, including special events, merchandise discounts, league pass, and more. Call 901-888-HOOP or click grizzlies.com today. All right, now let's talk some fantasy sports. Joined right now by Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers podcast. Andy, how's it going?
It is going pretty good, right in the throngs of the NFL season. So always busy, but doing well.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of the football season to hop on Fast Break Breakfast. We start on Fast Break Breakfast every time with the guest, with your actual breakfast. What'd you have for breakfast today?
Yeah, I guess I should have considered that when I chose my breakfast this morning. But no, I had a heaping bowl of Cinnamon Life cereal this morning as I jettisoned out the door. And it was, as Cinnamon Life cereal is, very delicious.
Have you been a consistent cereal man your whole life? Did you come back to cereal in adulthood? My experience was no cereal for a long time, have some little kids. Now cereal's back in my life.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent. I've had the pivots at times to some different breakfast choices, but cereal is I just love it, and I love eating lots of it. And I know that that's not good for you because they pretend that it's good for you on every
Right.
box, with
Yeah.
vitamins and minerals and all that. But I don't think that's broken down on the like 11 bowls in a morning type of ratio. So no, it's been a favorite for a long time, but the kids certainly don't hurt in the fact that we have way too much cereal in the house.
It's an excuse. It's an excuse. You're like,
That's
it's
right.
for them. It's for
That's
them.
right.
Well, your podcast I've got into in the last couple years. My buddy Chris, who I grew up, knew each other from church league basketball. We played fantasy football for like 20 years. He was the commish of our league. I think he actually left because he was inspired by your show to find a league that better fit his needs.
Okay.
Which I'm not, I think it's your fault. I understand. I want Chris to live his best life. It's cool. He did walk away after finally winning a championship for the first time in the 20-year history of the league.
Wow.
I thought that might have been maybe not the best etiquette for exiting. Right.
No
Are you supposed to come back and defend it?
Is that what you're saying? There's no defense of the title. He walked away as the champion.
Yeah, he did a John Elway, and I don't think you should be able to do that when you're a commish. That's all I'm saying.
I guess it's better than leaving in the frustration of never getting one. I don't know. It's
not. It's literally not. I was like, well, listen, all right. So maybe we didn't make enough trades for you, Chris.
I guess that might have been just like, hey, I've conquered this mountain, and now I'm moving on to the bigger mountain.
Yeah, I hope his current mountain is much worse than. But he asked me at some point. He's a listener of Fast Break Breakfast, and he told me, like, I don't know, he got me on your show, and I got hooked. And maybe I had enough basketball in my life, and I've started really enjoying your show. And I actually thought it was a great omen for you coming on this show this week, because on Tuesday on the Fantasy Footballers, you slipped up and misspoke, and you were talking about Dallas Cowboys linebacker Micah Parsons, and you said. I went to Chandler Parsons. And right. I was driving in my car, and I'm like, this is incredible. Coming on the show tomorrow on the brain, talking about Chandler Parsons. Although maybe it's a terrible omen because he wrecked my Grizzlies franchise.
Yeah. Those were days gone by, right? I think I saw him playing pickleball, and I realized what an advantage being an NBA player is on the pickleball courts with that arm span. And no, he just stuck in the brain because I definitely follow the NBA, not as close as the NFL anymore. But we're lifelong Suns fans out here, and grew up without, the D-backs didn't exist. We didn't have the Coyotes. The Cardinals were a transfer from St. Louis in the 80s. So it was a Suns town. So that's, Jason and myself on the show, we grew up wanting to be NBA players and backyard basketball games for most of our childhood. So the NBA is near and dear to me for sure.
So I've seen you wearing Suns hats on your show, and I've heard you talk about the Suns. My question is, can you buy the Suns?
No, unfortunately, we cannot. There is a gap between our current bank balances and what I believe Robert Sarver will be receiving for his 35%. But I have made the joke many times, like, when people talk about that fame, the genie and the wish and the getting the infinite money, most of the things I think about, I'm like, well, I don't need infinite money for the things I care about in life. I do need it to buy a franchise.
Yeah, you need infinite. Yeah.
I think that would be the one thing, if someone handed me $5 billion that I could practically use it on, is buying my hometown team. And that would be, I can't imagine a more fun thing than owning an NBA team. But no, I hate to break it to you, not quite there yet.
Can you at least cheer up DeAndre Ayton? I don't know if you've seen any of the Suns media day things. He doesn't I don't know what he's seem happy.
No, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is like not hiding real frustration. I don't know if this is a persona of, I've heard his teammates talk about laser-like focus this year. So maybe his mindset on focus is, trying to give you the cold, quiet, short answers to show how focused you are.
Oh, okay.
That's the like half glass half full decision that I'm making with DeAndre. But I think he wanted to be gone. I think he wanted to go be the guy in Indiana. And we said, no, we'll pay you. So we'll see how it all works out. A little frightening that, like, I guess I assume with Monty Williams and his personality and the kind of, older brother, father figure type of, players coach that he is, that he would have had some conversations with DeAndre since the Game 7 meltdown. But that seems to be confirmed on both sides, has not taken place. So that was a little concerning. I don't know. All that money should probably cheer him up at some point. It's going to be interesting.
That's the Mad Men gift. That's what the money's for.
That's right.
So maybe they can repair that.
Yeah.
So I do love fantasy football. I've been playing for a long time. There are some things that I like about it, and it's obviously way more successful than fantasy basketball. The cleanness of the one game a week,
yes,
makes it perfect. There are still some things about that I do like fantasy basketball more. Maybe it seems less arbitrary. Fantasy basketball is a lot more work, but like if a guy's playing 4 games, I know what he's going to give me reasonably. Yeah. Fantasy football, it's like a good receiver could go 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, or could give 20 yards, or, it's a lot of variableness. Do you enjoy that? Do you wish there's things you could change about fantasy football? I know leagues like Sleeper, you can play against the league average, which I actually really enjoy. And I'm bummed like Yahoo and ESPN won't let you do it. Are there things that you would like to tweak to make it a little more consistent?
That's always a difficult question, because I have seen more people, quit fantasy football than any other fantasy sport because of unpredictability, right? Like the team on paper should do X. And so, but like this last week was an example of Jason had Justin Jefferson, and Jefferson had his worst game of his career, and Jason's just beside himself because the paper didn't turn into reality. And so I think that's balanced in other fantasy sports, certainly in baseball, where it's, every day you have games, and then basketball, you have a ton of games where, like you said, 4 games during the week, maybe one's a little higher, one's a little lower. You kind of know where they're going to end up outside of injury. So I just think that unpredictability in fantasy football, it serves the game on the other side too, where, where you are so sad about an unpredictability and a low point for a player, you get the proportional on the other side, where somebody, a rookie has an explosive game, or a quarterback throws 5 touchdowns instead of 2, and the highs are very, very high and the lows are very low. I don't know if there's something I would tweak in particular. A lot of people like the playing against the median. I'm undecided on that. I don't have that in the majority of my leagues. I love head-to-head. I love the fact that it's just me versus you, but people get so bent out of shape with total point scoring that if that alleviates some frustration, I guess I can deal with it.
I mean, some people I've heard, like they want to get rid of kickers and things. And I'm personally I don't do team defense. I don't understand it.
Sure.
Like, I understand the ruling or the scoring, but I'm like, how did we end up here? And maybe it's just because in 1998, Sandbox was doing individual defensive players. And so I'm addicted to individual defensive players because like I did the team defense, and I'm like, this is just a random wheel. It's like the roulette wheel. You might get some sacks. And I was like, why are we doing this? Well, how did we end up not with individual defensive player? Like I don't even remember when team defense became default. Maybe it was default. And again, I was led astray by whatever website I was using back in the day.
Well, first of all, shout out to Sandbox, because that's where I, cut my teeth in fantasy, and it was basketball, and it was Sandbox basketball was amazing. And if you, when you talk about liking other fantasy sports, I like the OCD of checking every night. And that's what you don't get with football. You don't get the, like, every night of the week, follow along on your phone, follow along on your computer type of experience, which, maybe better for my relationships. I don't have a lot of that, but it's certainly fun. I think it's just that whole comprehension of so many players barrier where, to really, first of all, defense is just plain harder to understand in the, from a, X's and O's standpoint in football. It's like, I watch football all the time. I'm not going to be able to, at a glance, identify every defensive form or pay attention to every stat line for, tackle totals and pressures and all that stuff. So I think it became that thing where, I've heard a lot of people, they try to make their league represent the NFL. That's why you have, this many wide receivers, so this many tight ends, you only got one quarterback. And I think it was just a part of, hey, we got to get the defense in there. Let's just lump them together. And, because people have done those experiments on offense too. Team quarterback might be something that leagues have where you get an injury and you still get the other quarterback. And I don't know. We just settled in on that place of like, hey, I kind of think they're a good defense. Let's play them, and left it there.
The huge drawback, and the thing I try to like explain to people that they're missing out on IDP, the sheer joy of when it's your guy doing the pick six or your guy with the strip sack, or the best fantasy moment ever for me was when wide receiver Robert Meacham, it's a famous play. It was the Washington old football team against the Saints. He had on offense, he had a tackle after an interception. He got a tackle, a forced fumble, fumble recovery. He rips the ball away from the defender, runs it in for a touchdown. Yahoo got so confused, they gave him a defensive touchdown and an offensive touchdown. There was the commissioner, my buddy Chris, couldn't go back in and fix the score. He got a double TD. I'm like, you team defense people, you've never felt that moment. You never felt that moment.
That's true. Yeah, we definitely have not. But we also, the non-kicker people will never get those moments either. The fake field goal, pitch it over to him, throw it into the end zone. But
exactly.
Yeah, I know it's people have a hard time with randomness in general. We don't actually want it to come true only on paper, right? Because then you just decide the champion at the beginning of the year, and yet the randomness makes us frustrated. But that's sports. That's sports betting. That's sports when you play. I mean, you don't know which guys had a bad breakfast on the road that made them show up, and more tired that day, and the momentum changes. It's just the NFL is so good at having that thin line between a great week and a bad week, no matter what team you are. Colts knock out the Chiefs last week. Nobody thought that would happen. It happens because the NFL is just so close.
I liked how you shoehorned breakfast in there. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I did my best for you.
No, it was amazing. Have you ever played negative fantasy football? Because
you have to explain this.
A big thing for us, for our podcast, we're kind of, I don't know, odd. And we have a negative fantasy basketball league. And I believe I've perfected the formula. And you, in this league, it's a points league where, turnovers, missed shots. And also we do one of those things where the more shots you miss, the more the points, they just accrue and accrue. And also you can use minutes played. This is the drawback for football, where it isn't as clean. Okay. Like, I'm very interested in like a turnover league in football, but then the other things, I don't know how we would work it out. I don't know if you could do it where you were forced to pick between like the most used players. If you could add snap count in there, like you get points for snap counts, but then you would lose points anytime your player did anything remotely good.
Tackle behind the line of scrimmage,
gaining yards. Oh yeah. Losing yards.
That's a good one. That would be a really funny draft in terms of picking those players and then hoping for disaster. So no, I've never done it. Didn't know it existed, but
you should look. I think maybe
interesting. I've always wanted to draft Mitch Trubisky. So you're really talking to me.
It's one of those where like you would get points for Justin Fields completing less than 10 passes. Like that would be, you'd be like, this is incredible. He didn't hit double digit passes. That should definitely be a bonus. I mean, I want even in regular fantasy leagues, I was trying to pitch this, like maybe it was like a Jake Delhomme rule.
Yeah.
I want something where when you hit that fifth turnover, you get all your points back.
Oh yeah.
Like I wanted to build
rule. I like it.
Like the first turnover -3, the second -4, the third -5, maybe the fourth or fifth, you get everything back plus 10. Like you just win.
See.
It's random.
It's like you just go so far. If it's that much of a disaster,
the excitement of watching Jameis Winston to be like, bro, if he throws one more, I get it all back.
It's innovative. Yeah.
It seems just as reasonable to me as PPR. And I'm just an old man where I'm like, what is this? Where did this come from?
We want, wait, you a touchdown only guy then?
Our league is strict.
That's too much of a pause right there.
I want to say we're stingy with handing out the points. We're a point per 15 yards gained, from scrimmage for your backs.
So you're not doing decimal scoring either. So you get
we are doing decimal. I do remember the days of like, man, I guess these computers can't add up. Like I didn't hit 15 yards rushing. It's 0 points there.
When I started, that's how it was. It was, you get to that 14 mark and you're like, I still don't have a point. No, it's just, it's to capture some of that, everything changing on your phone. Hit that refresh. You don't want to refresh your phone and have nothing there, do you?
I'm not here advocating to go back to you have to hit the round number. No, decimal scoring.
That's why
absolutely.
PPR exists. We're half point. I mean, half point, I think, is the right median.
I feel like when you guys acknowledge that half point is preferred, you're admitting a mistake. Half point anything. Like if we can't get to the round numbers,
really. Okay.
For me, I mean, again, I walk through my life with a very self-righteous feeling. And so I say, oh, you went to half point. That's just you admitting you did it wrong. Not you, fantasy footballers, not you, Andy. I'm just saying the entire world. We're trying to thread
the needle here. We're trying to make a perfect world. We're not trying to, I know the polarization. You want to be the PPR or the non-PPR. We're just trying to bridge the gap of peace. And you're not willing. You're not willing
Michael
to come
Pittman
to the
has
table.
3 catches for 4 yards and you're happy, you're like, oh, it's 3 points. It's like, no, it's what are we doing here?
Okay. I mean, I understand. You come out from the basement, come over to half point. Maybe maybe we can find our way.
All right. Maybe we'll do it. I want to really endorse trying some kind of maybe you want to play negative fantasy basketball this year, get the feet wet.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see if my wife appreciates another league.
It's the way. Yeah. It's the way to do it. That's the thing with fantasy basketball. I can't do very many because it's every day. It's waivers every day. And it's like,
I could do a disservice to all the teams if you have
I could do it at night, but I don't. I wait until the deadline and the next morning.
I can't stand having too many leagues. Because to me, obsessing about specific leagues is what's fun. Exactly. It's being as over the top about your most important league or leagues that makes it enjoyable, not just getting through the checklist of tasks. So as much glory as it would be to win all of them or something, we just got a couple big ones that we're just obsessed about.
Exactly. It's the way to do it. I like you guys have the league of record. Like you have to care about one because otherwise it's like playing fantasy basketball. It's like, well, every bucket helps me. This isn't fun.
From every player. I mean,
what are we doing here?
If you have if you have a couple leagues that you love, then you get moments like Jason on the show where his soul is ripped from his body because of a simple loss to me on Sunday in week 3 of the NFL season.
Yeah. Well, Andy, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you finding the opportunity to come on.
Yeah, man.
And hopefully maybe next year get you back on and you tell me how that negative fantasy basketball went for you.
You've opened my eyes up to some of the possibilities here. So been a long time since I played fantasy basketball, but we did try to get into another league a couple years ago. But the problem is we were all like, a couple were in, a couple were out. It just didn't pan out. A couple teams were all alone, basically. And that's the other thing is it's like if you have managers that aren't paying any attention in basketball, it's like over.
Yes, that's true.
Like where I've had, unfortunately, some football leagues where it's like the guy's not been there for 2 weeks. He's now 2-0. I don't know how that happened, but doesn't get hurt. The guys that he drafted are winners and it's over.
Or when he's not even starting. He's starting her players and they still
wins. I know.
That's why Chris
pull your hair out.
Anyway, Andy, thank
you for having me. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your
Take
time.
Care.
See you, man. It's now time for the last drop. I'm joined by Gerald Bourget. Gerald, how's it going, man?
Oh, just things catching fire left and right out here in Phoenix. Everything's fine. This is fine.
Is everything as bad as it seems? I don't know if I'm just picking up these little sound bites and it's the easy media punchline joke to be like, oh, look at DeAndre Ayton. Look how unhappy he is. Is that the full context? Is it that bad?
I mean, it's kind of bad. I don't think it's as overblown as people are making it out to be. It's not good though. Like you look around and you hear that a player hasn't talked to their coach in 4.5 months, especially after the summer that he had and this team had. You would think that there would be some line of communication there
at some point.
Maybe like just give them a call, send a text, say, hey, I don't know, like especially because they were in the Valley playing basketball a lot over the summer.
We're happy to have you back.
Yeah, maybe
let bygones be bygones.
Right. Congratulations.
Excited for the new season. Congrats on the money.
Yep. You would think something would come up, but no, apparently not.
Dude, do vibes matter?
Yes. Especially
they do.
With this group. Yes.
Okay. All right. Do. I didn't know. I mean, I assume so. Like everyone, like right now where I'm at, my Grizzlies team, everyone's just like, the vibes are immaculate. Like everyone loves each other all the time. And I'm like, whatever. I don't know if I buy into it. And then everyone's like, man, seems terrible in Phoenix. But so you think it does matter?
It does. And I think, well, it's funny because last year the vibes are immaculate. That was a direct quote from Devin Booker. And now we're here and it happens so fast. We've got Jae Crowder, who doesn't want to be here, pulling an Eric Bledsoe. We've got DeAndre Ayton, who's clearly a little disgruntled that he hasn't talked to his coach in 4.5 months. And that's not even mentioning all the other bigger than basketball stuff, the Robert Sarver report coming out. It's just been a nightmare the last all off season since the Mavs series, basically.
I didn't see this at Suns Media Day. Was anyone asked, and did any players or coaches comment on whether or not they were thinking about trying to apply public pressure, such as like any kind of boycott or anything? If, Sarver hadn't recused himself or, announced he's going to sell.
Right. I think Sarver deciding to sell the team took a lot of pressure off the players to answer those types of questions. I know Chris Paul, and this was something Baxter Holmes reported as well, had conversations with Adam Silver before and after his kind of verdict, his punishment was handed down. But aside from that, like Chris Paul's kind of the only guy on the roster that really has that activist side to him, which is, these guys shouldn't be expected to answer for another man's sins anyway, but like it would have been nice to hear something other than, from my interactions with Sarver, that's not the guy I knew, yada, yada, yada. Like it would have been nice to hear a little bit more oomph in their condemnation of the things that he said and did.
Gotcha. The Jae Crowder situation, he got mad that he was in trade talks. Is that the whole story, or they moved his locker or something? I made that part up. Cam Johnson is maybe going to be the starter. Like what went wrong with the Jae Crowder?
Yeah. So we've gotten not conflicting reports or kind of corroborating reports, but I've heard from a source that the reason Jae Crowder was initially upset is that he wanted a sort of contract extension. He looked around. He saw all 4 of his other starters had gotten extended in the last calendar year or so. He wanted that. The Suns told him no. And then we've gotten other reports that it was due to the fact that they told him after that, like, this is Cam Johnson's year. He's going to be the starter now. So you combine those two, and in a contract year, a guy like Jay, he's got a lot of pride. Like, for better or worse, he's always been comfortable being the villain to assert himself. So at that point, it kind of, I guess, reached a breaking point where he wanted out. He didn't want to be here anymore. And he used social media to his advantage to let everybody know over the last few weeks.
Man, him having the hype video ready, that's
so great.
Incredible. I mean, I love it when these guys are posting. Like, it's one thing to be like, hey, here's a video that, like, my videographer who I pay clearly cut together this thing of me working out, or if it's John Morant, look at me tipping this person a lot. I just happen to have my film crew here to capture this organic moment. But I love that Jae Crowder, like, one, he's like, yeah, listen, I'm done. And by the way, here's my hype video, the trade for Jae Crowder hype video. Like, immaculately edited, like really high quality stuff. What are you as a Suns guy, like, what are you hoping to get from the Jae Crowder trade? Are there things that you think are realistic returns? Is this just like cut bait and you'll take any matching salary? I know a lot of fan bases are like, we'll give you this garbage in a 2nd round pick and we can get Jae Crowder, right?
Yeah, it's tough because his value is not what it should be based on the fact that everyone knows that he wants out now. Like, that's the thing that kills me is guys, when they want out, they make it public and then they kill their chances of getting traded because now their team no longer has leverage. But I do think
we call that a Durant.
Yes, exactly. At least Jae Crowder had the courage to follow through, though. Give him that.
But maybe if Durant had cut a video, maybe if he made his own highlight.
Where's the Kevin Durant video?
I guess maybe everyone knows what Kevin Durant can do. Doesn't need the.
I guess
I would love to hear the GM who was like, "Man, that Jae Crowder video got me fired up." Like, I was on the fence, but he has some great moments.
in Philly and Cleveland, they're going hype right now. They're excited. But no, I think the Suns are they're not just going to dump him to get whatever they can, get the situation away, because he's away from the team. But they do need reinforcements on that bench. Campaign was not trustworthy in the playoffs last year. He wound up getting benched late in the Mavs series. Landry Shamet didn't have a good year. And like, they need additional depth at the 4. Like, they've talked about playing Dario as a 4-5 kind of hybrid. Last time he was on the court, he was mostly a small ball 5. So I do think even with Cam starting, you need a little bit of size, some rebounding, just a little bit more depth at the 4, or you need another guard, because right now their third guard is either Dwayne Washington Jr., who's on a 2-way contract, or like Frank Jackson, who is a training camp invite. Like they don't have a set third guard behind Chris Paul and Cam Payne. So
Yeah, I know Dwayne Washington from the Pacers tank battles. It
right.
Was, he was rostered in my negative fantasy league, actually. Where I was getting a little extra points there. Oh, yeah. So this, like the Suns, all right, you say the vibes are bad. And you say it matters, but like I still see them listed ahead of my Grizzlies most places as like this upcoming season. And then I look at the roster, and like you said, it looks like they need reinforcements, especially if they're losing Jae Crowder. It seems like the team's a tiny bit worse. Like, is that fair? To me, the roster looks worse. I mean, I guess we can bake in like if Mikal Bridges improves or Devin Booker improves. In my mind, Devin Booker is what he is, and Chris Paul a year older, and then the ancillary pieces, the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like the depth chart. I don't really trust them that much, and it seems like they're not as good as last year. Is that fair?
I think the depth chart not as good as last year. Chris Paul, fair to question whether, he's just another year older. I think he'll still be effective during the regular season, but again, it's always going to be that question of can he hold up in the playoffs. The last 2 years, it's been not really. I do think the younger guys will get better. I think Monty was talking about putting the ball in their hands more and seeing what they can do in terms of create their own offense. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, you're right.
Which younger guys?
Crowder.
Who?
Yeah, so Mikal.
When you said younger guys, I'm like, who am I? Like nothing popped in my brain because you guys aren't interested in the draft, right? You guys don't like to scout or have draft picks.
Well, I guess when I say younger guys, like the younger core, so like
so like Mikal and
Mikal, Cam, Landry Shamet.
I mean, Cam would be the oldest player on the Grizzlies, but keep talking.
Yes, you really would. But yeah, I think he's going to try and see what they can do, give them a little bit more opportunities. But you're right, the depth needs some work. I do think they're still like this team is still, if they can get past the vibe stuff and all the outside noise and whatever, this team could still win 50, 55 games pretty easily. I feel like they're still going to be a regular season powerhouse.
Yeah, the top line talent's there. I mean, they were awesome last year, and we, I guess maybe no one knows what happened in Game 7 against the Mavericks. Maybe it was COVID, whatever. It was a weird end of the year. It was a weird. Chris Paul pulled the rabbit out of his hat when I didn't think he was going to again. I'm like, oh, you did it again. Kind of fell short in spectacular fashion. Thought you got over the hump. But it's just a strange year. I'm like known as like I'm a Devin Booker hater, and I antagonize with the Suns fans a lot. But like to me, it feels like this is a thing where it seems like it's heading to implosion. And I don't even know like if they're good, even if they're, I mean, I assume they're going to be good, but like, it just seems like the personalities at some point, like, I don't know if it's similar to like a Utah Jazz thing where it's like, hey, we're really good. And now it's like you missed the moment. Like the moment was 2 years ago. Maybe it's not fair for the Suns. Like, are you optimistic? Like that it'll congeal and the locker room leaders, like who is the locker room leader? Like, is it Chris Paul? Like, does he rally the people? Is it Bismack Biyombo? Is he the feel good guy to bring everybody in?
Hey man, don't sleep on him and Dario. They're beloved in that locker room. But yeah, it's not great. Like Jae Crowder was a prominent voice in the locker room.
Yeah.
So losing him is gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Chris Paul is, another year older, but he's still kind of that guy. I do think the young-ish guys are pretty responsible for that as well. And I understand the Devin Booker hate, but like he is very effective for a guy who does not get the same number of touches of scorers of his caliber. Like he's
awesome. I mean, I make fun of him, but he's incredible. Yeah.
Right. He's led the league in points per touch out of I forget what the minimum criteria is, but for the last like 3 years, and that's with Chris Paul kind of taking a lot of that ball handling. So I am curious, at some point, do they kind of shift away from that reliance on Chris to do everything and be like, okay, Devin, like take over some of the playmaking stuff you used to do back when, Isaiah Canaan was your point guard. Like, can you go back to that?
When he'd never won 3 games in a row in his career.
Right. So when he was playing with a bunch of G League players. No, I do think this team will still be good. I think they'll figure things out. I don't know if I would pick them to win the title right now, just because that's a lot to overcome on and off the court. But we'll see. It's training camp, so everybody's optimistic except for the Suns. Right
exactly. Last thing let's go back to it. What are you hoping for? Last thing, what are you hoping for the Jae Crowder trade? I don't feel like I got a great answer. What's your dream trade? What's your dream salary match right there that you think is reasonable?
I mean, I really do like, because if the Cavs are actually interested, I do think you can match salary with Jay and somebody else to get Karis LeVert. Will you have to throw in a first round pick? Probably.
Ooh.
But I kind of like that.
I love that for the Cavs. I don't like it for the Suns. So let's do that.
Worried about LeVert?
I'm not a huge LeVert guy.
Yeah.
I do think he's better than Campaign, and he's better than Landry Shamet. So he does fill a role. And you know what? Honestly, I think the Cavs would do it without a first round pick. I think you gave him, if you give him the expiring, if you give him the Dario Saric and Jae Crowder, in my mind, although this is a Cavaliers front office that traded a protected first round pick last year for Karis LeVert, but with their roster composition, they don't need him. I think they don't, like, to avoid having to pay him an extension, which is what I assume Karis LeVert wants as well. I mean, it also it's a weird, like, you assume Cam Johnson's going to get an extension, and then Jae Crowder's mad he was going to get one. Would this team, with the lack of an owner, like, are they looking to also extend just another player? Because you assume that's all going to be tax stuff, but that's another problem for another day. Gerald, thanks for coming on, man, and hope you'll drop in some other time.
Absolutely. Hopefully next time I drop in, everything around me won't be on fire.
Perfect. Thanks, buddy.